What's up, everybody? FTWitachi here. You know what it is. Thank you all very much for tuning in to our updated Destruction Warlock guide for Shadowlands. We were here last time just over a month ago with the pre-patch of Destruction Warlock guide to Shadowlands. With a couple of weeks now under our belts and Season 1 now just beginning, we are here to go ahead and give you guys the updated version for our Destruction guide with a couple of things changing. First off, let's go ahead and get into a little bit of a rundown on what Destruction Warlocks are. This is a damage DPS spec with the primary stat of Intellect, a Master of Chaos who calls down fire to burn and demolish enemies, preferred weapon options of Staff, Wand, Dagger, and Sword, with the main abilities of Incinerate, Chaos Bolt, Immolate, Conflagrate, Rain of Fire, and Summon Infernal. First off, before we get into this guide, if you are new around here and you can subscribe, it'd be greatly appreciated. If you can, go ahead and like and share this video if you enjoyed it. And last but not least, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask in the comment section down below. You never know, I might have missed something, but I don't think I did because I watched my own videos many times to make sure everything was explained within the video. But without further ado, let's get to it. Alrighty, so let's get to it, starting off with the stat priority. Of course, as already explained, your main stat is going to be Intellect, and you're going to be finding that on all of your gear options anyways, so there's not too much to worry about that, especially as a cloth DPS anyways. You're going to be seeing Intellect on all of your gear. That is going to be your main stat of choice. We do have Intellect over Mastery, which is equals to Haste over Crit over Versatility. So what I mean by that is whether option you choose to stack, whether that's Mastery or Haste, each one is about as equal to the other. So if you want to go ahead and stack up Mastery, or you want to go ahead and stack up Haste, you can go ahead and do so. However, Crit and Versatility are the weaker links when it comes to your stat priority. So, as a recap, Intellect over Mastery, which is equal to Haste over Crit over Versatility. However, with the rest of this guide, we're going to be stacking with Mastery and sticking with Mastery, so let's get to it. Starting off with Enchants. Enchant Ring, Tenets of Mastery is going to be your Enchant Ring choice. Enchant Weapon, you're going to be going with Celestial Guidance. New into Shadowlands Enchant Chest, we're going to be going with Eternal Stats. Also new into Shadowlands, we're going to be going with Enchant Cloak, Fortified Leech. Now there's 3 different new sections as well besides the chests and the cloaks when it comes to enchants and Shadowlands. Starting off with Enchant's Boots. These are an agility slot enchant only option in Shadowlands. However, there is an enchant that we can take advantage of, and that is Speed of Soul. Next up is Enchant Wrist. This is where we're going to be using for us to benefit ourselves, is the Intellect slot of enchant in Shadowlands. We're going to be going with Enchant Wrist, Eternal Intellect. And last but not least, Enchant Gloves, the Strength slot enchant in Shadowlands. The options on these are absolutely terrible and not beneficial for us at all. Unless you have a Gathering profession in Shadowlands, I suggest you go with Enchant Gloves, Shadowlands Gathering. There's also additional buffs that you can apply to your gear. For example, with leatherworking, you can get for your chest, a Heavy Desolate Armor Kit, which is plus 32 stamina. Now, this isn't an enchant like back in the day. You would use this back in the day and it would replace your enchant. Nowadays, this does stack with your enchant, and it is very similar to applying let's say, a flask to yourself, how you get a buff for about 1 to 2 hours, depending on if you're an alchemist or not. This will just go ahead and apply a buff to your chest piece of plus 32 stamina, so might as well take advantage of it. And of course, there's another option from Alchemist for your weapon, Shadow Core Oil, which is going to deal extra shadow damage, and just like the Desolate Armor Kit, this is going to go ahead and stack on your weapon, so do not worry about your weapon enchant being removed. Your flask of choice is going to be a Spectral Flask of Power. Your potion of choice is going to be a Potion of Spectral Intellect, and your gem choice is going to be Masterful Jewel Cluster. Last but not least, your food option is going to be Indecent Ravioli with applesauce, which sounds yummy in my tummy. Or if you're in a guild group or raid group or any group that does have the option to go ahead and use the Feast of Glutinous Hedonism. Otherwise, if you are doing mostly solo content, just go ahead and make sure you have in your bags the Iridescent Ravioli of applesauce. Next up, we're going to be getting into the Destruction Warlock talents, and this is a little bit easier than the Demonology video for those of you that did watch that one. We're going to be going over the first tier here. We got Flashover, which is a passive ability. Conflagrate deals 25% increased damage and grants an additional charge of Backdraft. Eradication, passive. Chaos Bolt increases the damage you deal to the target by 10% for 7 seconds. And of course, Soulfire, 1000 mana, 3.7 second cast, burns the enemy's soul, dealing 4,819 fire damage and applying Immolate. Out of these three, the only real option that is useful is Flashover. Eradication and Soulfire are okay, but damage-wise, they're just not as good as Flashover, and Flashover is also a passive ability, comparing that to Soulfire, having to throw that into your rotation, but nonetheless, Flashover is the go-to talent for this first row. Next up, we've got Reverse Entropy, which is passive. Your spells have a chance to grant you 15% haste for 8 seconds. Internal Combustion, passive. Chaos Bolt consumes up to 5 seconds of Immolate's damage over time effect on your target, instantly dealing that much damage. As well as Shadowburn, 1 Soul Shard, instant. Blast the target for 1,491 Shadow Flame damage, gaining 50% critical strike chance to targets that have 20% or less health. Restores 1 Soul Shard if the target dies within 5 seconds, and this is a maximum of 2 charges. Out of these 3 options, the weakest link is Internal Combustion. It is not useful whatsoever compared to the other 2. Reverse Entropy is the go-to option here. However, sometimes in PvP you can have some usage from Shadowburn, but overall Reverse Entropy is the way to go. Next up, tier 3, we got Demon Skin, passive. Your Soul Leech Absorption now passively recharges at a rate of 0.5% of maximum health every 1 second, and may now absorb up to 15% of the maximum health. You got Burning Rush, instant, increase your movement speed by 50%, but also damages you for 4% of your maximum health every 1 second. Movement impairing effects may not reduce you below 100% of normal movement speed or last until cancelled. Dark Pact, which is instant, sacrifice 20% of your current health to shield you for 250% of that sacrificed health, plus an additional 1312 for 20 seconds. Usable while suffering from crowd control impairing effects. Out of these 3 options, it is versatile. You can choose any of the 3. Burning Rush is very, very useful in dungeons and raid situations where you got to get from point A to point B at a quicker pace. Sometimes there are boss fights to where there is a lot of movement required, so Burning Rush can come in handy. Out of Demon Skin and Dark Pact, both of these are defensive cooldown abilities, even though one of them is passive. Dark Pact is a little bit stronger instantly, but overall and over time, Demon Skin is the better of the 2 options. Next up, we got Inferno, passive. Rain of Fire damage is increased by 20% and has a 20% chance to generate a Soul Shard fragment. Fire and Brimstone, passive. Incinerate now also hits all enemies near your target for 40% damage, and it generates 2 Soul Shard fragments for each additional enemy hit. And last but not least, Cataclysm, 500 mana, 1.9 second cast. Calls forth a Cataclysm at the target location, dealing 2,000 Shadow Flame damage to all enemies within 8 yards, and afflicting them with Immolate. Out of these 3 options, they're all AoE or multiple target type talents. The only useful and versatile talent here is Cataclysm. The other 2 just do not compare to Cataclysm at this moment in time. Next up, we got Dark Fury, passive. Reduces the cooldown of Shadow Fury by 15 seconds and increases radius by 2 yards. Mortal Coil, 1000 mana, instant, horrifies an enemy target into fleeing, incapacitating them for 3 seconds and healing you for 20% of the maximum health. And of course, Howl of Terror, instant, let loose a terrifying howl, causing 5 enemies within 10 yards to flee in fear, disorienting them for 20 seconds. Damage may cancel the effect. Similar to the Demon Skin row, you can choose any of these 3 talents. They do not affect damage whatsoever. Dark Fury, for example, is very, very useful in situations when you're on a raid fight or a boss fight on any dungeon and raid. You need to go ahead and have that ability to go ahead and stun multiple targets in a given time. So go ahead and select Dark Fury. Mortal Coil can be used as a defensive cooldown in PvE situations, because on most boss fights you're not going to be able to incapacitate them. But the 20% of maximum health return is very, very useful and helps out your healers. Otherwise, I love Mortal Coil for a low number PvP, such as arenas as well as duels. Howl of Terror is like my go-to for battlegrounds, because I like to have Shadow Fury and Howl of Terror to be able to use and play with. So that's pretty much my usage for Howl of Terror. Next up, Roaring Blaze, passive. Conflagrate increases your channel Demon Fire, Immolate, Incinerate, and Conflagrate damage to the target by 25% for 8 seconds. Reign of Chaos, passive. While your initial Infernal is active, every Soul Shard you spend has a 15% chance to summon an additional Infernal that lasts 8 seconds. And Grimoire of Sacrifice, instant. Sacrifices your demon pet for power, gaining its command demon ability, and causing your spells to sometimes also deal 502 additional shadow damage. Lasts 1 hour or until you have a demon pet summoned. Grimir Sacrifice is a no-go in this tier row. Roaring Blaze isn't too bad, but Reign of Chaos outbeats the other two talents in this row, so Reign of Chaos is the way to go. And last but not least, Soul Conduit. Passive. Every soul shard you spend has a 15% chance to be refunded. Channel Demon Fire. 750 mana channeled. Launches 15 bolts of Fellfire for over 2.8 seconds at random targets afflicted by your Immolate within 40 yards. So you can control where this is aimed at. Each bolt deals 222 fire damage to the target and 88 fire damage to nearby enemies. And last but not least, Dark Soul Instability, 500 mana. Instant, infuses your soul with unstable power, increasing your crit by 30% for 20 seconds. Out of these three, the go-to is Channel Demon Fire. Soul Conduit isn't that useful compared to the other two options, and then Dark Soul Instability just doesn't outbeat Channel Demon Fire. Next up, we're going to be getting into the PvP talents for a Destruction Warlock. Starting off with Focused Chaos. Passive. Chaos Bolt damage is increased by 40% but no longer strikes additional targets afflicted by Havoc. This is useful in low number PvP combat. Not useful in Battlegrounds, but it is useful in arenas as well as 1v1 duels big time. It is a very, very useful PvP talent. Cremation. Passive. Conflagrate deals up to an additional 3% of the target's maximum health in fire damage if the target is afflicted by your Immolate. Again, very, very useful PvP talent. I'm just currently using my Battleground setup right now, so give or take what I have currently going on. But again, Cremation is also a very, very useful PvP talent, but I just don't like to use it in Battleground situations. Bane of Havoc replaces Havoc. 500 mana instant, curses the ground with a demonic Bane, causing all of your single target spells to also strike targets marked by the Bane last 12 seconds. This is my go-to when it comes to Battleground, so I love Bane of Havoc. Bane of Fragility, 625 mana instant, reduces the target's maximum health by up to 15% for 10 seconds, not a useful ability. Nether Ward, 500 mana instant, surrounds the caster with a shield that lasts 3 seconds, reflecting all harmful spells cast on you. It's a defensive cooldown and it is useful, so if you want to go ahead and play with it, you can. Essence Drain. Passive. Whenever you heal yourself with Drain Life, the enemy target deals 5% reduced damage to you for 6 seconds, stacks up to 5 times. Again, another defensive cooldown, and you can play with it. Casting Circle, 1000 mana, 0.47 second cast. Summons a casting circle for 8 seconds. While within the casting circle, you are immune to silence and interrupt effects. Learning casting circle causes unending resolve to no longer grant immunity to silence and interrupt effects. The worst PvP talent of all times. Please do not play with it. Demon Armor, 500 mana instant. Protects the caster, increasing maximum health by 5% and increases armor by 90%. Again, another defensive cooldown ability, but there is better options. Gateway Mastery. Passive, increases the range of your demonic gateway by 20 yards and reduces the cast time by 30%. Reduces the time between how often players can take your demonic gateway by 15 seconds as well. I wish we had a fourth option for PvP talents. Sadly, there's much better options than Gateway Mastery. Fell Fissure. Passive. Chaos Bolt creates a 5-yard wide eruption of fell fire under the target, reducing movement speed by 50% and reducing all healing received by 25% on all enemies within the fissure. Lasts 6 seconds. One of my go-tos, especially for Battlegrounds. Amplify Curse. Instant. Your next Curse of Exhaustion, Curse of Tongues, or Curse of Weakness is amplified. Curse of Exhaustion reduces the target's movement speed by an additional 20%. Curse of Tongues increases casting time by an additional 30%. And Curse of Weakness, enemy is unable to critically strike. And this is pretty much a mandatory PvP talent. When it comes to my options, I do use Bane of Havoc, Fell Fissure, and Amplify Curse for Battlegrounds. And then if I am doing arenas or 1v1 duels, I'll go ahead and swap Havoc and Fissure with Focused Chaos and Cremation. Again, there are some other talents that you can play with, such as the defensive cooldown ones, and of course, if you really want to, Gateway Mastery, but those are my options. Next up, and last but not least, we're going to get into the simplified version of the rotation for a Destruction Warlock. Basically, we're not going to be going into deep details, for example, on, of course, you should be using Health Stones, of course, you should be using Curses when they do fit. Of course, which demon you're going to want to have out most of the time is your Fell Imp for single target and AoE multiple target rotations. However, in PvP, you will see some usage of your Observer and Shavara, and of course in questing you'll see your usage of the Void Lord, but for this example we're going to stick with the standardized Felled Imp, and there's so much more, but we're just basically going to give you guys the basic rundown of a Destruction Warlock rotation. So without further ado, let's get to it. Starting off with Immolate, you're going to want to keep this on your target at all times, using Conflagrate to go ahead and generate some backdraft, which is going to go ahead and boost up your Incinerate and Chaos Bolt. You're going to want to use Chaos Bolt whenever you have 2+ Soul Shards. Incinerate is going to be your filler. Infernal is going to be your main major cooldown, as well as last but not least, you're going to have a Covenant ability depending on the Covenant of your choice. We're currently rocking the Necro Lords, so we're going to be using Decimating Bolt on cooldown, and of course you're going to be using Cataclysm as well as Channel Demon Fire on cooldown. So let's go ahead and give you guys a little bit of a taste on what this is all about. So, starting off with my Decimating Bolt on cooldown, we got Channel Demon Fire on cooldown, our Infernal's up, so might as well go ahead and use that. We got 4 Soul Shards, so let's go ahead and get some Chaos Bolts out. Immolate's about to get away, so let's go ahead and use Cataclysm on cooldown, and that's basically it when it comes to the rotation. Very, very simple when it comes to a single target as a Destruction Warlock. So without further ado, let's go ahead and move on to multiple targets. When it comes to multiple targets, such as AoE situations, the only difference is you're going to be using your Havoc. We are going to be using our Bane of Havoc as our example for Havoc, because we do have it as a PvP talent at this moment in time, but it will be doing the same thing, as well as Rain of Fire. You're going to be swapping out your Chaos Bolts for Rain of Fire, but of course if you are able to rack up enough Soul Shards, go ahead and spam some Chaos Bolts as well in correlation with Havoc. Of course, go ahead and continue to use your single target rotation. You would be using your Infernal if it's off cooldown. You'll be spamming Cataclysm on cooldown. You'll be spamming Demon Fire, or Channel Demon Fire on cooldown. Your Covenant ability on cooldown. Chaos Bolts, if you have 2+ Soul Shards, try to use this in correlation with a Havoc. Incinerate is going to be your filler. Conflagrate to get some backdraft for your Incinerate and Chaos Bolts, and of course try to apply Immolate on all targets. However, that should come into play from Cataclysm, and of course using Rain of Fire as much as possible. So let's go ahead and start this fight off with a nice little bit of a Cataclysm, applying our abilities on both targets, which is our Immolate. Of course, we want to go ahead and use Decimating Bolt on cooldown. You want to go ahead and Channel Demon Fire on cooldown. We have enough Soul Shards here to go ahead and get a Havoc into some Chaos Bolts. And of course, after that, we're going to go ahead and want to get this, we're going to want to get Rain of Fire out as quickly as possible. Again, keep Immolate on targets as much as possible. And now that we have 3 Soul Shards, we have enough to go ahead and use a Rain of Fire. But again, Channel Demon Fire off cooldown, Cataclysm off cooldown, and of course, we're going to go ahead and try to rack up as quickly as possible a Rain of Fire. Because of Havoc being on cooldown, we'd rather use Rain of Fire than Chaos Bolt. Now with that completed, thank you all very much for tuning in. I hope this answers most of your questions when it comes to Warlocks in Shadowlands. If you have any questions, go ahead and post down below. If we missed anything, we're either going to be putting it into a different video. For example, Legendaries, Conduits, Soulbinds, and Covenants. Those are going to be in separate videos. Stay tuned for some more World of Warcraft content. Subscribe if you're new around here. Like and share the video as well. And I'll catch you guys next time. Peace out.